Anybody.
It's not there.
Good to go. All right, so 1901, we have a quorum, so we are gonna call ourselves to order here. So thank you much. We're gonna start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and first, public comment.
You're very well.
Okay, you can scoot your chair up if you would like to.
We don't have any.
We don't have any microphones.
I just can't hear.
Okay.
Is this public comment?
It is.
Already?
Yes.
You're right on it. My name is Rochelle Alex, and I am building a house on 23B and B Street in Brooklyn. The house will be completed during the school year. I want my children to go to the Brooklyn school and be enrolled in Brooklyn. I have a 4-year-old going into kindergarten, and I have a 15-year-old who I want to go to Woodstock Academy. I have called Mayflexa to find out what the rules are, what the law is. I have already spent $58,000, so I'm not about to walk away from this deal. The house is going to be valued at about $350,000, and I assume you're going to get taxes on it for the next 75 to 100 years. And I know. I will agree that if we don't move in to the town and live there and sleep there before the school year is over, then I will pay for Woodstock Academy. Because if I'm not building a house, I have plenty of money to pay. But I plan on being there. Unfortunately, I don't want to move those kids mid-year. It's very important that, you know, once they get in the school system, especially as a teenager, I don't want to move them mid-year. And I don't want them killing the school system. Which is one of the reasons I picked Brooklyn, because they were between Brooklyn, Pomfret, and Woodstock, but had a nice piece of land, and I wanted to build it there. So I'm asking, I have everything here. I have proof that what I said is true. I've got the financing in place. I've got the everything's in place. I just have to wait for the building to stop. Or finish, I should say. And I'm willing to sign an agreement. So I really hope that those kids can start in Brooklyn and not have to be switched in the middle of the year, because it's really not a good thing. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Minutes of the June 27th meeting. I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Right? Nate, any comments or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Very good. Correspondence and communication. Yes. That's okay.
So I have included a few thank you notes. Okay, John? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So there are a few thank yous that I'd like to send. There are many more that need to go. There's been a lot of work over the summer, and so some thank you notes would be forthcoming. There's a very overdue thank you note to our local Boy Scout leader, John Jenna, and he coordinated a cleanup here of the school grounds on Earth Day, which was a while ago, but I had not gotten a letter out to him, so that's there. I have a letter to Jeffrey and Lisa Ahrens, who made a generous $200 donation to the band program. They had students that have graduated from here and made a great point of saying how grateful they were to the teachers, the staff, and administration for all their work and commitment, and that their children have received a great education and want to give back. Their kids are involved in lots of things, band being one of them. There's a thank you note here for an anonymous donor who came in and was interested in supporting the advancement of technology in our schools, specifically the Brooklyn Elementary Schools has a connection to a person here at the elementary school and wanted to purchase a Chromebook cart, headphones, and wrote a check for $8,000 to the Brooklyn Elementary School. In addition to making a donation and requesting to remain anonymous, that person is a couple, husband and wife, who have also made multiple connections to people in the technology industry to see if we could build some relationships with people like Google and other organizations like Charter who might be able to support the analysis of our infrastructure here and supporting our current and continued growth of technology in our district. So that note's in there. And then 2 thank you notes to Heather Tamsin, our principal at the middle school, and to Mark Weaver, the assistant principal of the elementary school, who put a lot of time and effort in coordinating the search committees for the 2 new administrators that we hired this year. I know Amanda Brown also helped Heather through that process as well. There are many teachers who will also receive a letter of appreciation. There was a lot of work. Hiring is a lot of work and many hours reviewing applications and going through interviews and analyzing what the district needs and the building needs are. So I greatly appreciate it. I think that's an incredibly important job. So I thank them. All right. Sorry. I'll tell you what, which one is that? Oh, that's going to go in executive session. So there was a letter from an employee that I'd like to move into executive session for discussion. That employee, I think it is referencing that. That employee did request that we did permit us to talk about the personnel matter in executive session. So that will be at the end of the meeting. Finally, C, I did include some communication in your packet regarding the public comment that you heard today from Ms. Alex, Ms. Rochelle Alex. I did include a copy of the letter that Ms. Alex sent to me. It states very similar to what you just heard. In addition to that letter, I included a copy of the Board of Education policy. There is a policy on residency. Policy 5118. Let me see if I can get this. Sorry. So in the policy 5118 talks about residency and what the requirements are for non-resident students. And then I did include a summary of some of the conversations that I've had. I did get an opportunity to meet with Ms. Alex, and I respect the fact that she is requesting and wants her children to attend the Brooklyn schools. I understand that and her commitment to purchasing a home or building a home here. I did this morning stop by and see the property, and at this point the property is, as you can see in the picture, fully wooded and the breaking of the ground has not started yet. And I believe that at this point that completion of that house, which by policy says children need to live here, I don't think that it's appropriate for us to approve that, the waiver of residency. So under the recommendation portion of this, I did recommend that and I don't know if you want to discuss this first, but I did make a recommendation here, so I don't know. You want me to share that first? Okay, so The recommendation does say that I would recommend that the board deny the request for residency accommodation, and that when the construction of the home is completed, that the students be enrolled then, or if it is close to the end of the school year, that they may consider requesting accommodation to remain in the current district. Our policy, as well as other districts, allows for if a family moves just before the end of the quarter, that you can finish that quarter out, or in similar cases where a family might be closing on a house in 3 or 4 weeks, we would want them to enroll now. But in this situation, as you can see in the photograph, the construction and the clearing of the property hasn't even begun yet.
Does anybody have any questions about that? Board members? Would you like us to make a motion on that?
You can make a motion to direct me to respond.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts for or against the recommendation that Ms. Beal has put forth?
No, my only comment is, we've done a lot of work creating these policies, and over the last year and a half, 2 years, I guess, we're really reviewing policies and doing a lot of work. So I think it's important to, we've done the work for a reason. It's important to do that. So.
Then I would entertain a motion. Do you want to uphold the recommendations of the superintendent or?
Uphold.
So neither are you making initial recommendation?
Uphold.
I'll second.
Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we are going to uphold the recommendation of the superintendent. All right, and any other communication that we missed?
No.
Thank you. Yep, I just, sometimes something comes in last minute, so I just want to make sure. Brooklyn's Best.
So we haven't started the school year yet. There are many Brooklyn's Bests, and we'll hear more about that. Some of the work that people have done has been tremendous over the summer. As you might see, there are desks moving and a lot of room changes at the elementary school. We've really been short-staffed as far as our custodial staff due to some personal changes. We did have a retirement of one of our custodians partway through the summer, as well as some time that custodian needed to have some personal leave. And so those remaining people have done a lot of work, and so I really appreciate all that they've done. In addition to all the hiring that happened, there's a lot of moving and a lot of cleaning that has occurred. So when we talk about Brooklyn's Best, it's a combination of so many people and from different places. So, but tonight the announcement of, I would like to formally introduce our new elementary school principal. So we have not had a public meeting since our new elementary principal was hired. So as I mentioned earlier, Mark Weaver had conducted the search for the committee. They had coordinated a committee and conducted the search for the principal. And we had about 25 applicants and really qualified people. And so the committee had made a recommendation to the board. The board had interviewed final candidates, and we did appoint Paula Graff. Paula Graff comes to us with a wide range of experiences and background. Started her career in Wisconsin and spent several years in an inner city school teaching different grade levels. Moved back to Connecticut, where she originally had come from, had worked in Killingly, and then moved to Hebron, where she spent, I'm not sure how many years, sorry.
9 years?
Okay,
10 years?
so 9 years approximately, teaching fifth and sixth grade, and then moved on to be the curriculum and technology specialist over the last 3 years. So she comes to us with a wide range of experiences and skills that we're looking for right now to bring our Brooklyn Elementary School forward. So it's my pleasure to introduce Paula Graff.
You already got the trial by fire on the radio program.
And then our second part of the Brooklyn's Best I'd like to share is our district and school advancement plan. So as you know, last year we came to you in September. The administrative team had done some work, come to you in September and presented the district and school advancement plans. We're continuing along with the work from last year. In our June meeting, we gave you some reports about what the progress was and some areas that we needed to continue our work in. And so this summer, the administrative team, again, worked together to determine which of those areas we're going to continue on, which ones we need to add to or adjust. I want to remind you that just a little over a year ago, we were very excited to have the administrative team working so collaboratively and vertically between the elementary and middle school. Now it feels more like commonplace. And so I'm very excited to say that, because I think that's really where the direction we're headed. That takes us to the next step. I think the plan before you today has been worked on over the summer. They still need to take it to their faculties and share with their faculties. So this is the plan they're going to present to their faculties. Those teachers may have feedback, and so there may be some adjustments or tweaks to this plan. But I had asked that they come and present this evening to you. So they're going to give you a high-level overview. You'll see that the district plan really is to how do I support each one of the schools, and collaboratively as an administrative team, how can we get this work done? So really the work is happening in the schools, and as principals who are providing professional development to their teachers, supervision and evaluation and feedback to their teachers. So I would ask that Heather Tamsin, Josh Torsha, and Paula Graff, Amanda Brown.
Mine's all working.
Okay, so, and that's the truth. So Amanda is kind of the whole spectrum from pre-K to 8th grade. And so the work of the special ed department is embedded in the work of all teachers. And so, so if you three can come up and share a little bit about your plan.
I'm gonna start. So looking at our,
We can have you guys stand on this side, because
they want you on TV.
On that side.
Closer. There you go.
So when Mark and I sat down to really take a look at our district, our school plan, we looked at what we had in place for last year. And although the school did make some growth, we thought that there was definitely room for improvement. So with that, we kept our goals very similar to what we had in place last year, and we looked at our strategies and how we could tweak our strategies. So looking at our reading and our math, the strategies are very similar, because we really want to look at our tier 1, our whole group instruction, and focus on our individual tier 2 and tier 3 instruction that's taking place in our schools, and identifying what is it that our children need and what can we do to provide them that support. So with that, we have in place our data teams that we're going to continue weekly with all of our grade levels, pre-K all the way up to grade 4. We'll have professional learning communities once a month, where we have volunteers stay after school and do some sort of professional learning. We will also have common planning times for our grade levels to meet together to collaborate. With that, we are also going to have SRBI data days, our first one being in October. We'll have all of our universal screens done, so we'll have a lot of data on our students. And at that time, the morning's going to be spent with our SRBI team, going through that data, grouping our students based on their needs, and the afternoon will be spent with our VMS specialist planning for the instruction that's going to take place over the 6-week cycles. Other things that we have in place, we do have a contract with EastCon to come out and provide us some professional development with Readers and Writers Workshop, and that's going to happen with the 5th grade teachers at the middle school as well. So we'll have some collaboration going on there between the 2 buildings. As far as our surveys that went home, I think our biggest looking at the results from our parent survey, the biggest concern that came up in that was some of our students don't feel that they're included all of the time. So with that, we thought about developing some leadership opportunities for our students, creating a student council in our building. And I know that we only have the little ones, but they can be leaders and we need to teach them how to be leaders. And with that, we're going to provide multiple opportunities for the students to make choices, make decisions on what they want to see happen in the school, and think of opportunities and ways that they can include others that may not feel as included. So they will be creating a student council. We're going to investigate peer mediation for recess time and see if we can get a group of students together to do some peer mediation and to help with some of our behavior that may be happening at those areas as well. As far as our Homeschool Connection, Mark and I are going to be holding business in Brooklyn meetings bi-monthly, where we're going to be asking families to come in and community members to come in and talk about the things that are happening at our elementary school. So each meeting will begin with highlighting something in our school, whether it's our STEAM program, whether it's the progress our reading department has made with the intervention students. It could be a wide range of things. We may have our student council come in and present something that they're working on. And then from there, we'll have an open forum with the parent. After we ask, like if the students are there, they can step out and then there will be open dialogue between the adults in the room with Mark and I. That's kind of our big overview.
So for the middle school, I think a lot of the work we started last year, and in looking at that, we really wanted to continue that work, feeling like we have the right people in place for our professional development, and so continuing that connection. So we're also looking to collaborate more with the elementary school to really align things for us vertically. So the professional development that they're getting through EastCon, so last year our 5th grade teachers began the writer's workshop work, but we had limited access to the EastCon training. So that only kind of got started. So 5th grade is going to continue that work, but we're also getting the materials for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers as well, so that we can really continue that through the grade levels. Now we're going to add into that the reader's workshop model, and that's really going to be across 5 through 8 in conjunction with the elementary school. So I think for me, a big piece of this really is that collaboration with our teachers. You'll see in the plan for the middle school that also another piece that we were looking at was the opportunity for our really good arts teachers to be able to collaborate across schools. In small districts like this, it's a huge challenge. You have one art teacher who's looking for someone to be able to partner with and really talk to, and also starting to get teachers to branch out to other districts that are nearby and see what collaboration we can get there as well. So that's a piece of our goal as well. Do you want to jump in with that?
Sure. So kind of keeping with the same theme, we're looking to continue on with the work that was already done a year ago and build on that. So for math, last year, Pat Sussler came in to work with the teachers for math professional development. That's going to continue through to this year. Heather and I have spent some time over the past couple of weeks putting together the Engage New York materials. That's what we're going to be using 5th grade through 8th grade in the school. We took the assessments from that resource as well, so we can start to pinpoint some areas where our students can grow. So we're going to use that to find where they are fluent in math, and then we're also going to use that to identify what areas they could use some intervention. So continuing on that SRBI, just in a middle school type model. So we're excited where that's going to be able to go, and our teachers are really excited about it. They've been coming in, and they've seen what we've been able to do, and they're excited and ready to go, picking up on the work they did a year ago. So that's a good sign to see.
Some really positive energy of teachers coming in and just kind of saying like, something feels different, and I'm really excited about it. Like everybody's kind of like, what's this on your desk? What are we doing with that? So, it's getting the resources to teachers that they're excited about, the classroom resources that we have now with the new reading materials for classrooms. It's like Christmas when they walk into the building right now. So it's a really good positive energy, I think, to start the year, which we're really excited about. We're continuing our curriculum work with Jane Cook coming in. We had also gotten feedback from the staff, paraprofessionals, and from teachers saying they wanted more PD and they wanted more technology PD. So that's going to be a piece of what we incorporate as we're getting more Chromebooks into teachers' hands, kids' hands, more smart boards. We really need to continue that professional development. So we're reaching out for some of that. The tech book component that we're getting now for our social studies and our science classes, which is going to align with the new standards in both social studies and science, Teachers are really excited. They piloted at the end of last year. Everybody was on board to continue with it this year. So what we have now is 2 Chrome carts per grade level. So we've kind of reorganized the access. So those 2 Chromebooks per grade level are going to be used primarily, I think, for the tech books. But then we also have the labs in the library that people can sign up for. So I think there's a lot of excitement and a little bit of, okay, so how are we going to manage this? Because obviously we want those Chromebooks in kids' hands as much as possible. A lot of really new, exciting staff coming on that are ready to use these materials. So I think it's pretty exciting there.
I would just reiterate that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and if we compare where we were last year to where we are this year, they're already laying the foundation before the teachers walk through the door. Today they spent several hours with all the new teachers, so we had our new teacher orientation, and they've already kind of been oriented and quickly are moving through kind of this is how we do things in Brooklyn. And what teachers are seeing when they're walking in is like a different level. So I know that they're working hard. I know it's a little overwhelming for everybody. But I know that our students can meet the challenge. Our staff will meet the challenge, and we'll make mistakes along the way, and we'll learn from those mistakes, and we'll keep aiming high. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question, if you don't mind. For both numeracy and literacy, I guess that's math and reading. You have end of the year goals or achievements that are somewhat higher than the achievements in each grade level for the previous year.
Mhm.
I may be all hung up in the jargon here, which I don't necessarily understand, but I don't see or understand the way you're going to be measuring intermediate progress so that you can judge as you're going through the year whether you have a chance of reaching this goal or perhaps going to exceed it.
Well, I think through the SRBI process, we do universal screens 3 times a year. So those will be our checkpoints throughout the year to make sure that we're reaching or we're.
How many times a year?
3 times a year.
3 times, thank you.
3 times a year. And then for our intervention students or children that need a little extra support, we're going to be progress monitoring them either weekly or bi-weekly. So we will have their progress on the radar. We are meeting every 6 weeks as our data team cycles for SRBI. So with that, we'll have data on them every 6 weeks.
And that data is somehow equivalent to performance on this STAR test or STAR benchmark?
It should be aligned, yes. So it's all Common Core related. So it's the curriculum that we have in place right now. We have assessments that are aligned with the Common Core.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else under Brooklyn's basket?
More to come. More to come. All right, so ending balance for 17-18.
So in your packet, you will find an updated budget sheet. So the initial packet that went home went to for your review. If you have an opportunity to look at that, has been revised. So in the 17-18 school year, just because the reason you have a revision is because we received one additional bill for an extended school year program for 5 days in June. So what I thought was a closed books wasn't, but it is now. So we processed that bill, and our ending balance for this year, for the 17-18 school year, is $115,436.54. So we can make a motion this evening to inform the Board of Finance or the town of Brooklyn that we're going to be returning that amount of money because our books are closed at this point.
So I will entertain a motion that we will return $115,436.54 to the town of Brooklyn to close out the fiscal 2017-18 Board of Ed budget.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further comments or questions?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Current budget balance. So, this document is really, not quite ready for public consumption yet, but it does reflect that we started to do some of the purchasing that we had in place. We have started to encumber some funds, although there's some work to be done on that. I think that there was a lot of discussion, formally and informally, about how we report the budget on a monthly basis to you. And I know that Mr. Otto would like to know a little bit clearer where the encumbrances are, which lines are encumbered and which are not. Makes perfect sense to me. So you can look at this. I don't think it's really ready for really deep analysis yet. There are some things, so for example, teacher salaries, that encumbrance shows a negative 200,000, which is not accurate. So in addition to all the work that we're doing on the teacher side of things, there is work going on in the business office, increasing like the subservice, and then changing over to the Time Clock Plus system, which will assist with our payroll process. So I just have not had the time to spend with our business office to clarify these numbers. So some of those encumbrances are really not correct. So this is the way it has been done in the past, but we are going to be making some changes. So I would ask your indulgence to give me a little bit longer, and you'll get a report like this, but I think I'll provide some kind of overview summary of encumbrance and clean this up for our next meeting. I can tell you that our sites, so like our elementary school, our middle school, special ed facilities, are all monitoring their spending based on what was budgeted, and they're in control of their budget. So we're in good shape. Again, if I refer back to a year ago from where we were, there was not a business manager, and so there's some changes going on, and some nice improvements going on the backside of things that you might not be seeing.
Okay. Enrollment report.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, no.
Off the budget.
Sorry, no.
I'm not surprised that the encumbrances aren't fully expressed yet, and certainly understandable. We're going to have time to work on that. And I think it's not just me that should know about that. Everyone on the Board of Education ought to understand how the encumbrances are constructed. Otherwise, it can't make any sense of this budget report. I do have quite a few questions, which I don't intend to take up time in this meeting, about the construction of the budget numbers to begin with. Encumbrances are built off what the budget numbers should be, but there are things that certainly I don't understand, and perhaps there are some others that don't understand why, for example, our transportation costs are showing in total nearly $400,000 less than last year, and I have no idea why that would be. And then special ed costs, which are always kind of a roll of dice anyway, seem to be nearly $300,000 higher than last year, and I haven't heard that we've had a tremendous increase in the number of special ed students. And there are many other examples of numbers that seem to have fluctuated quite a bit from the actual expenditures last year. Total number of students isn't that much different. There are changes in costs that we know about, so I guess I'd like to schedule some time to talk with you about these items. Thank you.
So I will explain that this budget was what was presented. So we started building the budget in November, December. These were the numbers that were presented. These were the numbers that were approved. We actually created this budget as a draft budget in our budgeting software. And so when it came time for the new year, we just took it from the draft budgeting process to our budget and, whatever the approved budget was. So none of these numbers have changed from what we've talked about over the last 4 or 5 months as we approved the budget. But I certainly can dig deeper into those numbers and give you explanations
I'm not
on
looking
those.
for really small changes. I mean, some of these there are differences, but they're inconsequential. But changes that are in the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars are kind of important to understand. I would like to point out that the only part of your budget that's approved is the bottom line.
I guess what I was saying is this document, if you pull the numbers of this document, they're exactly the
Those are the
same
numbers that are in.
as what's here. And this document shows every student, I can go down to the dollar for the students that we knew at the time for special ed placements. We've got that very clear, it's very transparent. So I could certainly provide that at any level that, that you wish for me to share that. I certainly can review those numbers again with Jeff or anyone else that would like to see them.
I would think it would be helpful for us to do that prior to the start of the budget, at least the next year's budget, because probably the total of transportation plus special ed transportation hasn't changed, but the
No, that's the
allocation.
total of all transportation. The total of all transportation shows to be nearly $400,000 lower than last year. And I
And we
don't,
were under budget
I don't
for
think that's-
transportation, which is why we had to borrow money from the town.
I don't,
So with the budget, the whole process, so when we collapsed the schedules to have a common schedule, we saved money in transportation. When we reduced 2 buses, that was a savings. We worked very hard throughout the year last year, especially at the beginning of the year, to maximize our existing transportation without adding additional expenses. So there are some students that have shared transportation with other communities. Every time we make one of those adjustments, there's a pretty significant savings. But I certainly can, these documents are very explainable. I've got many sheets of explanation for these, and I have my working budget book from the last budget season, so I certainly can flip into that and show you where those numbers come from. I think that, transportation is an interesting one. It's an interesting number. And our numbers had changed pretty dramatically as a result of the work of everybody sort of in this office and the bus company to try to reduce the number of maybe collapsing buses, sharing rides. So there was a pretty significant savings. So this is based on what we anticipate our expenditures to be. So.
Any further comments or questions on budget?
Just going on transportation, did we get some of those sort of points of contention ironed out with MJ as far as?
So that probably is a point of celebration. I feel like we got our bus lists, we got them posted. There were very few little glitches. We had sort of the initial draft of bus routes. We said, could you make some additional changes? Yes, they went back and made those changes. I am very optimistic, and I know I was optimistic last year, but I feel really confident that we're in really good shape. Really what the direction was, or in the communication or collaboration with the M&J was, don't change anything. It's working at the end of the year. Let's see if we can roll into a new year and leave it in a working place. So for the most part, most of it is the same as what it's been in the past.
Okay.
So I think we're starting on a good note. It wasn't easy, but I think we're in a good place.
I was talking more about the charges, some of the charges that they thought were charged. We didn't- those
Oh,
things.
yes.
Okay, so we're still working on that.
No, that's all been taken
Okay.
care of. There were some that, some of it was things that we disagreed on. We were waiting on new invoices. They didn't realize we were waiting on new invoices, so some of it we owed, some of it we said we don't owe because those are fines or, liquidated damages as a result of the contract, implementing the contract. So there were some fines that were, that added up to between $8,000 and $10,000 for services not provided as written in the contract. So, so that we sort of agreed. They may not have agreed totally, but they did agree.
Enrollment reports.
So the enrollment report changes by the minute. The enrollment report, do you have an updated one in your packet?
With the 821 numbers on it?
Yes, do you have it?
Yep.
You don't, that's good. Okay, thank you. So the original 814 numbers, so we do this kind of rolling all the time. So 814, I said, give me an enrollment report. So they generated their enrollment report. And then 822, the numbers changed pretty dramatically. So you can see we went from,
We lost 13 kids.
no, we didn't. No, we didn't lose 13 kids. Yes, it does look like that. Good grief.
I'm just asking.
Well,
The
it
814
says plus 7, plus
Right.
3, plus 1, plus
Okay,
1,
yeah,
plus
that doesn't-
2, so that's.
So the 96,
Four,
so from kindergarten,
14.
it said 96, but then it's 90 plus 3 equals 93.
It looks like we added 14.
So so this is what I think happened, my version of this. So if I'm looking at an 814, I have a completely separate 814 sheet, and then I had updated these numbers actually last night based on the enrollment as of yesterday afternoon. And so what I did is, if you look in that double highlighted box, at least for the elementary school on your sheet, you just look at that. The 814 said we had 111 kindergartners, and between 814 and 821, we added 7.
Yeah.
So so we went from 18.5 kids in preschool to 19.6 kids in preschool. There are some that have not been enrolled yet. So there are more that would come in here.
So one that has to do their class.
I think at this point, I think we need to wait to enroll those students in order to make a decision about that. Number one, to make sure that preschoolers that are on our rolls actually come.
show up.
And then I think based on the, as openings come, I think we need to bring them in. So I know that we pride ourselves on providing a robust preschool experience for all kids. I don't know that we can accommodate an additional 4 or 5 or 6 that might want to get in. So I'm going to say that we have like an rolling enrollment, so that as there become vacancies, that we bring the next student in. So
Do we have a policy on that, or it's just a practice?
yeah.
I know at one time in probably 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, this is before kindergarten went to full day, but they had an extra session of PM pre-K to accommodate. So you said there's a couple kind of kids in the wings that we know of. Does that include potential birth to 3 kids that are on the radar that are just waiting for birthdays?
These are just, so I think any birth to 3 students that are like 2.9 are coming in already, so they're already accounted for.
Okay.
You know, if a 3-year-old shows up in town, that's a birth to 3 student, obviously we'd have to accommodate somehow. You don't have to give them a program, you have to provide them the services that they need as part of their individualized program.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's speech, sometimes that's a program. So it depends on what the child needs. So you can see that the numbers just are bumping up. I think kindergarten is a little bit of concern. The number now is,
So is it 96 or 99?
it's 90. So there are 93 students right now. So there were 90 a week ago, and there was plus 3, so that's 93.
The 96 is now the
I think the person who's working on this report added another 3, so they added 3. So like they looked at 118, They took 111 and added, okay, so I don't know why 93. What I know is 90, so I don't know why 96. What I know is 93, and then that's a class size of 18.6. So there's some 19s and an 18 in there. Grade 1, we had one additional student register, so 18.75, and then grade 2 is class sizes of 19 to 20. Grade 3 is 18, and grade 4 is a class size of 20. All still reasonable class sizes. I think the one I'm most concerned about is preschool. You don't see the breakdown of the 2-day, 3-day, 5-day kids. And so there's not always 19 kids in there. That's the average. So it's not always 19. So it's a little lower than that, but so that's where I would want to be cautious and be careful about adding 5 new students.
So right now, the pre-K and the kindergarten are both kind of on the edge, because the kindergarten, the same thing, that would be like 20 kids.
Yes.
So I'd say you can better handle, I say this is the non-teacher person, but you can better handle 20 kids in 4th grade than 20 kids in kindergarten.
Yeah,
So
correct. And part of the NIAC accreditation requirement is a 10-to-1.
okay,
And so they have adult support in kindergarten. So kindergartens would have 2 adults to the 20 kids. So we're still meeting that, minimum requirement for NIAC.
It's just, I guess this is just philosophical, but if we value what we provide to these kids, and they're going to be coming into school as kindergartners next year, or potentially in 2 years, it's hard to eliminate some of them.
I know.
And I think I talked to you before about a child that really had a need. Parents didn't know enough to get the need assessed, were denied, were put on the waiting list last year. And so we almost like missed a kid that really needed the pre-K, right? More than some of the kids that probably were already there. So I think that's something to be careful of.
but then
I agree.
they're not required to come. I understand and respect that opinion, completely agree with you, but they're not required to come to pre-K. So
No, they're not
So
required, but we as a community and as a board have decided that it's important enough that we fund it and we provide it. And then to say to some kids, well, you're in the lottery system, you're not gonna get there, is difficult. It's a difficult decision.
And I think that, at this point, we've got a handful of students sort of in the bucket to be determined what that's going to be. Those are the students that have come in the last week to register. Maybe that they just moved here, and just found out that we have a preschool, and so I think that I'd like to see how we start the school year. Sometimes kids don't start the school year with us. They get registered, they might get a 2-day-a-week slot. The parents say, I can't do a 2-day-a-week, so they don't come. Then we have an opening. So, I'd like to have the opportunity to see who actually comes, and see if there's any last minute people that pull out. I do think that's a possibility. And so I guess if in the first week of September, the end of the first week of September, if those 5 are still sitting there and I don't have a spot, I think we might want to have a conversation at that point.
And don't you think we should probably prioritize 4-year-olds over 3-year-olds?
Yes, and
Can we do that? I mean, we can do that.
yeah, we can.
If a child has 2 years of pre-K, but they should have at least 1 year, and they're gonna come in behind the curve
I
on
agree.
kindergarten, not knowing how to sit and how to behave, and that's the whole point. So they come into kindergarten ready for school.
Yeah.
So we really should at least target the 4-year-olds and put the 3-year-olds on hold.
And so I think this is a good conversation, and I think, having the principal sitting in the audience is good so that she's hearing that and can be looking at that and monitoring those numbers as we move forward. And then if we get to that first week, I'll come back to you with a cost of what it's going to cost, assuming we can hire a teacher part-time and staff that and get a room ready. It's not impossible, and we could do it if we needed to. We had a conversation yesterday during our administrative council about the numbers, and we said, okay, what if the numbers bump up enough? What are we going to do? So, we have Plan B, But before we jump into Plan B, hiring somebody and creating another section, I'd like to really confirm who shows up before we jump to that.
That makes sense.
So, I'd be happy to report, I mean, I can report to you informally and let you know what the numbers are as we continue. The middle school, I think they're seeing some bump in some numbers. I think they're having some larger classes, but I think it's a situation that we're gonna not necessarily add another teacher to. Then it's hard to tell the numbers. It's hard to tell the numbers on that report.
The 8th grade class is huge, huh?
It is, yeah, that's that big group that's coming through.
Get him out this year.
We're getting rid of them.
So we'll keep watching.
All right, very good. Announcements of new hires.
So, you've had the opportunity to meet our two new administrators, and our new hires at the elementary school. I'll list them by school and by grade. So Melissa Violet is a new kindergarten teacher. She's coming to us from Wyndham, I believe. Sarah Froelich is a grade 1 teacher. I think a brand new teacher. Colleen Sokolowski is going to be a grade 3. She did her student teaching here last year and did some long-term subbing, so we're familiar with her a little bit. She's thrilled to be able to come back as a teacher in her own classroom. Amanda Lunsford is grade 3. I think that she has 1 year experience, from Wyndham. Dakota Nicholson, I believe, is a brand new teacher, first year. Allison Woods is a special education teacher at the elementary school as well. Then at the middle school, we have Christina Cassio. She's a grade 5 teacher. She has served a couple years as a long-term sub in Putnam, the last couple years in Putnam, and is thrilled to have her own classroom as well. Rachel Makowitz is a grade 8 science teacher. Comes to us with 1 year of experience teaching science in the middle school in Norwich. Also excited. Donna Backhouse is our math interventionist. She's part-time math interventionist. She's got more experience. I don't remember how many years, but she's very well equipped to take on this role. So we've got a mix of more veteran staff and veteran hires and brand new hires. Sabrina Pascarelli is a reading interventionist. She's coming to us from Ashford, Hampton. Thank you, Hampton. She was reading, one of those small towns, and because of budgets, had been displaced for her job. She's got reading intervention background, more at the elementary level, so it's going to be a change for her to be at the middle school level. Candace Anderson, Dr. Anderson is our school psychologist. She's coming to us from Woodstock Public Schools and has got several years of experience as well. And Joyelle Karen, who's not a teacher, but she's our PRR person. So she actually is a certified teacher. This position is a non-certified position, but she's coming to us in our educational resource room. And so we're thrilled to have all of our positions filled. We do have one long-term sub position that we're still trying to shore up. We had what we believed was a candidate that got a full-time job somewhere else. So that's the risk. That's what happens. But as I said earlier, we had our new teacher orientation today. A lot of excitement. May and Keith both were able to pop in on that, and a lot of energy and excitement. We this morning started our day. M&J took us on a bus tour through the community. We started at we started at Baker's Dozen, so we all descended on Baker's Dozen, and then got to see different parts of the town, some of the historical places and some of the communities. So about an hour bus tour, and our bus driver is a longtime resident, not that long, but a longtime resident of Brooklyn, and got to share all the different history of Brooklyn, and it was really, she was better. I was trying to compare with all these notes and talking about, the historical people, and she could tell us more than we all needed to know. So she was great.
If she walks through the double decker bus tour with
Yeah. So it was a great time.
Opening the school and other important dates.
Okay, so, tomorrow morning, we're meeting with M&J. We're gonna do, the administrators are coming in and we're gonna meet with some of the M&J folks and just kind of put names and faces together. We just want to start the year off, kind of a happy new year, start the year off, open conversation, encouraging that open communication between, administration and the driver. So, just kind of a quick coffee meet and greet. And then on Friday, the administrators are going to be touring at the Brooklyn Fairgrounds. Last year, we had a booth at the Brooklyn Fairgrounds. This year, we just didn't have enough manpower hours to cover all the hours. So they're going to be a roaming Brooklyn administrator group on Friday afternoon between 1:30 and 3. So if you're at the fairgrounds, we'd love to see you and see the kids and the families. So please find us and introduce yourself, and we might have a little Brooklyn Rest pencil or something fun for you. Monday is our big day. Our staff come back on Monday. We have convocation in the morning, 8:30 to 10. We'll all be together in the auditorium. We're going to kind of kick the year off, let people know where we're starting, where we hope to end the year, and just have a nice welcome. Teachers have been, or all staff have been sending photographs from the from their summer fun in, and that's how we're going to start the day with a little slideshow of some of the fun family pictures, and then we're going to get right into business, some celebrations, and then talk about where we're headed. We are actually going to have a potluck lunch on that day, so staff are going to bring in something to share, and so we'll have lunch together and jump right back into some training for the afternoon. The first day for kids is Wednesday the 29th. Kindergarten through grade 8 start on the 29th, and preschoolers start on the next day, the 30th. Just a reminder, there's no school on Labor Day, September 3rd, and on September 6th is the open house barbecue night. A night you want to be at. You don't want to miss that. You want to get a parking spot early because it gets crowded. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hopefully the fire marshal's not around. Park over there.
That's right.
All right. Committee reports. I don't think any of our internal committees have met since the last time we met. Mr. Otto gave us the day off for finance this month, so thanks. Actually, going to eat dinner at home. Anybody else?
I just said a couple. I wasn't here for the June meeting, so I know we're looking forward to this school year. But last school year, I didn't get the fourth quarter honor roll report from Kennedy High School. So we had 32 Brooklyn students from freshmen to seniors who made high honors, first honors, second honors. The freshmen took home the quarter 4 trophy. They had 12 freshmen that were on the honor roll. So nice job to the freshmen last year. Yep.
Recreation or anybody else?
I did just on the heels of the technology discussion that we had earlier. I was talking a little bit with Patty earlier today, and I think it'd be a good idea to get an IT committee together. Where we meet every month or every other month or something like that, just to kind of look at. There's this opportunity that she's talking about with the anonymous donor who wants to basically come in and give us a lot of extra devices to use, technology devices, Chromebooks, and also wants to look at our network, because if you take all of these devices and you add them to the network that we have, the network slows down, right? So the thought, and I've had a chance to speak to this person a little bit too. The thought is to really boost up the network, increase the number of connection points that we have on the wireless and on the hard connection points throughout the middle school and the elementary school. And really, the idea is that if you're kind of here with your technology, then your network should be here, so you can kind of grow into it and not only be here, you know what I mean? So, it's a great opportunity. I think, and I know Patty's really been working hard at looking into it, making a lot of phone calls and everything. And anyway, I think it would be good to have an IT committee that would, help, with making some of those phone calls or providing advice or whatever. So maybe we can.
Don't we already have a technology for that one?
Do we?
And we have to update the technology plan. There were board members on that, which, that, I don't know that they.
I know many we've never met. So the technology committee, there is a technology committee that did meet in the spring, sort of revised our plan, and but we did not include board members. So I think it would be good, especially in light of sort of the warp speed that we're working over the summer to try to look at this technology.
And when the recommendation comes in, the person,
Right.
that's where it should come from.
Right. Yeah.
So that we can maybe. Well, we need to.
Anyway, I mean,
So
I mean,
it sounds like you're volunteering.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It's kind of my
It
background.
should be somebody that knows something.
That's kind of-
Are you gonna fight across the table here?
Cool.
And paper, scissors, shoot,
You can come on with me.
Yeah.
if you want to do that, yeah. That's kind of my background with work, so I'm happy to obviously be on it and see if we can figure out a couple of other people that
Yes.
join us.
Yes. Great.
Okay.
Okay, we will.
I don't have anything else. Old business, status of.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of little things and then some on this list, so I'll try to breeze through. The roof project, so all the documentation was submitted to the state. They sent some information back talking about what is identified as ineligible costs. So there are some ineligible costs of about $25,000. Roger LaFleur is going to, he already reached out to the Weaving Committee to set up a meeting, and we'll share that information with the committee as a whole. The paving project looks amazing out there. Trooper Karate already said, could we get a speed bump for over there? Because it's nice and smooth. People will be riding, forgetting to slow down in the on the property. But so we're gonna look into that. There are some marks being left on the pavement. It was such a hot time when that was being laid down. I did reach out to the company Willis, and he's going to come back out. He'll be monitoring that. He said it could be marking for a little longer still, but he will come out. I guess there's some kind of system where they do like little repairs to those. We went for a week without riding on the pavement out there, and we opened it up for voting, which a week time should have been good, but there are some marks. There are marks here in this parking lot as well. So Willis was very good. He said, we'll come back out. We'll take, don't worry about it. We'll fix that. That's not a big deal. The generator, so during the daylight, if you look back here, there are 2 concrete pads poured, getting ready for that generator to come in. We're anticipating that generator arriving sometime around October. We had to take some trees down to get it set up properly. We also took some trees down that now, if there is a single standing tree back there that might get knocked down in the wind. Yesterday I was driving in and saw this huge crane back there, or I don't know what they call it, but a big, they were cutting the trees down and kind of moving them off. So anyways, it looks great back there. They're still cleaning up, but it looks really great. We anticipate shutting the power down in this building, the entire building, between October 5th to the 8th. That's Friday's a PD day, so we're already planning to hold PD at the other school, and Monday's Columbus Day. So we're hoping that that's going to work out with everybody, that we can shut down the power, wire in the panels for the generators, so we'll be ready to go when we go on Tuesday. The energy management project, I asked Tony for a report on that. We were thinking they had wanted to be done with the major wiring, pulling wires from every heating source in every room. They thought they might get that done this summer. They're not quite done that. They're almost done in this building. They'll be done before school. They hope to be done with all the classrooms at the middle school by opening. might be a stretch, but there's still some additional spaces, hallways, cafeterias. So there'll be some work going on in the building, but they're really not very intrusive. They'll have visitors badges, they'll follow all the school rules, but that work will continue into September for sure. What's not on this list is the solar project. I think in your packet, I have a, okay. So there are some educational specifications for the Brooklyn Elementary School photovoltaic array and the middle school. So this is the narrative description that Mr. LaFleur has generated so that we can move forward. The Board of Finance had approved, or the town approved, to move forward with the solar project, at least to the next step. If we get approved for that project, we would then go to a town meeting where we'd have to vote on the whole project. Just kind of a summary, some of the paperwork talks about the elementary school solar project. The plan is for the solar panels to be attached to the metal roof, as we talked about. The roof was designed for that, and the roofing contractors for both of those companies would work in collaboration with the solar project in order to make sure they don't invalidate the warranty for either of those roofs. The elementary school, this school, we would look at the solar generating about 25% of the solar, or the energy that's used here. The elementary school, they're anticipating putting ballasted solar panels up there. They just sit on the roof and are weighted. That's a flat roof, so it's pretty simple. That roof, they're anticipating generating about 50% of the power that is used over there. That's a minimum. It likely would go higher.
Now, when he first came and talked to us, he said that if we upgraded all our
Switching equipment.
so we would be able to generate more. That's not possible.
I would have to bring him back here for that if you want to talk to him
Because
about
it
it.
sounds like now we're still probably updating that and then we dropped off of what, how, I mean, do we still have to upgrade our?
Yeah, because they said the switching equipment was the kind of the construction point there, that if we upgraded that, it was capable of more in both buildings. It was just the existing equipment without the $75,000 extra.
But the 25 and the 50% are
Those
not.
seem lower than what you're,
Yeah, the 50% I think is a little higher because originally I think they
Maybe.
talked about 35%.
Originally, they said the middle
yeah.
school was gonna be less than the
Right.
elementary.
Right.
But I thought that part of what we had to do to get the generator here is we pretty much had to upgrade that connection point.
Well, anyway.
And I thought,
So the generator was a completely separate project that got approved in 2016.
but I thought like now, when you had to, like, that project got approved, but now, like, putting it in, I thought there had to be something done with the switch.
We're preparing for so while we're building, installing the generator, we're preparing the site in anticipation of having a solar switch as well. I did kind of ask and re-ask, kind of say, why aren't we doing more here? The presentation that Roger and his associate that was working on this with him did present this plan to the Board of Finance. I think there's a reason for, I don't understand the full reason for it, but the limitation here on this roof. And I think part of it, and maybe we should have them come back in October, we could, so really what they need is to make a motion to move this forward. Originally, we thought we had to have this done by June 30th. The state changed the way they're accepting projects, and so they're accepting them on a rolling monthly basis. So once this board approves this, then it would go to the state. So we don't have to approve it. We could bring him back and ask him again and tell us, is there a way we can increase?
If we approve it, then this is the way
These
it
are the
is,
specifications.
and that's the way it's gonna be.
Cause
I believe
I swear that the elementary school is more than.
there was
25
discussion
years old.
about the elementary school with the aesthetics, not seeing solar panels off the street originally, which would have limited the size of the system. They wanted to see the roof, finished roof the way it was, and then Roger mentioned that there could have been more mouse that you would see them. And then there was the discussion about the tree, when the tree's in the way near the playground.
Yeah, those big.
But
they
I don't
took-
know if he calculated that or didn't, but it was, the original proposition was, I believe, this side of the building, so we would see it.
It might be worth having further conversations. I mean, but just seeing solar panels,
You see pomfrets.
you do, absolutely, you see them on your house.
I would plaster my entire house. Definitely not the back of my house, but I would still plaster my entire
No,
house.
I mean, you see them on most roofs, so I don't know that that's really,
A deterrent.
no, I don't think so.
I'd be happy to ask them to come back for our September meeting.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, cause I just don't feel like those are the numbers that we were.
No, I agree.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say that, like, the payback of the potential cost savings is about $2 million over the next 20 years. So it's still a pretty significant amount of savings in our energy costs over the next 20 years. So it's still, there's still, I think it's just divided differently now. I think initially they were both at about 35%. So, and as sort of like as a basic number, I think what they talked about is these are conservative numbers when they talk to us about 35% of the needed or the used energy at both buildings. And I think that's what they're saying here too, that it's still a conservative number, that it's likely we could generate more than that, but.
Because usually salesmen and car manufacturers overestimate everything.
So I'll bring it back in September.
Did you have any other projects?
I do not.
Okay, about the white stuff on the blue.
Yes, yeah, I didn't give it any, so first I'm gonna clarify that white stuff, I always thought the stone up there, there's no stone up there, I was up there recently, and it's not stone, it's like a paint material that they put over that flat membrane roof and that runs down the middle, that's what's leaching out. They have been out a couple times, they came out with a product, they haven't sealed it yet, they haven't decided what they're gonna seal it with. They have been out, they've tried different products to clean it. What they thought they had sort of was, this is what we think it's gonna work, isn't really working for them. So they're still in progress. But we haven't forgotten about it.
Okay.
Thank you, I forgot about that.
Maybe cover it with solar.
That's right.
See, then you won't even notice it.
Right.
See, from
See
inside, maybe
what?
we have to. All right. For new business, I'm just gonna skip a little bit. We have new policies, a first read of policies. So are these new policies or these amended policies?
These are new policies. You'll see in there, some of them say amend, make this one change. So some of them are policies we have, some of them are brand new. And so there's pretty clear description on them of what we believe should be added. And so these are only policies that we believe should be added or changed. They're not any that we said don't want the policy, they're just the ones we want to add.
Okay. All right. So we'll do that. The insurance claim for the lightning strike?
So I've informed you, but there is a tree on Gorman, the green between the parking and there's grass and then Gorman Road. And so there's a very large tree out there. You'll see two little cones out by this large tree that was struck by lightning. It was on a Wednesday. It wasn't one of those gigantic storms, but it was a storm that hit Brooklyn. And so it was struck. I had a neighbor call and tell us about the lightning strike, and we went out and looked at it. I have called the insurance company. So the tree was struck. The air conditioner on the preschool wing was struck, something there. We have parts on order for that. And there was a switch in this school that was struck. And so I've made a claim to Kerma, our insurance liability insurance carrier.
It goes from like.
And so it's just in the works. So
I
they
think that's the same day that, I don't know how it worked out, that's the same day that I think the development was and so
oh,
it's
okay.
the same, because it was a Wednesday, and that's the day they had the
Water.
tornadoes in Ashford.
Okay.
That was still.
No, that was your,
That's the way
yeah.
I said the pump had
Yeah.
been well.
Yeah.
That was that weekend after that storm.
So just so you know, there's a claim in the works. We've sent pictures, pictures of switches, air conditioners, the tree. And we did have a tree company come out and look at that tree, and sort of there's not, the feel is that there's not an immediate threat that it's gonna come right down. It's probably a tree that does need to come down, and I know that Brooklyn's looking at removing some trees and trimming back. The tree, Jeff Page, who's done some tree work here before, resident and just really terrific in response, came out pretty quickly, did look at a tree over by the preschool entrance that needs to go. So we have some limbs that he removed, and that tree, which was pretty dead, standing and kind of in the area where our preschoolers enter. So that tree came down. But the one out by the road is still alive, and we're gonna continue to watch it.
But wouldn't that be covered by the insurance claim if we were to take it down?
We're hoping so, yes. They said, oh, well, that might not be covered. And I said, well, I'm hoping it's gonna be covered. So it's certainly something that I'm,
Let's be covered trees.
Right.
Unless they fall in your car.
well, you know, so that's one of the things we talked about. So I'm hoping that it will be covered.
All right, so we did have, and remind me if I forwarded it to you or not, I had another candidate for our open position that had emailed me responses.
You did send it
Okay,
to us.
I thought I did, but I just wanted to make sure. Ms. Morrison was not able to come to the meeting this evening, she is out of town. So you had all of that. But I do have something else in the audience, that, Mrs. Buell had met during our furniture disposal this weekend. I just wanna actually go back to that for a second. I know that it's been talked about, but I just wanted to make sure that people realize, I knew that the Memorial School in Plainfield had a fire, because I work in Plainfield at the police station. And so I immediately called Patty that morning and said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but can you call Superintendent Pedro to say, like, you know, we have this furniture that we're supposed to give away this weekend. You know, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the damage is or whatever, but Patty did reach out to Ken. They are going to be housed at the old Killingham High School. That's not what I mean, old high school.
It's not the old high school.
Middle high school. But so we did reach out to them first as a gesture. So I just want to reassure people that, like, we didn't just give away furniture without considering Plainfield at all. So that was a thought, and but they just wasn't needed. It wasn't needed because they actually were going to be housed at the school. So but Mrs. Buell actually, I've met an individual and they were involved in a conversation. And if you want to come and introduce yourself to the board members, I forwarded the same questions that we had asked any of the other candidates as well.
Can we sit here?
Yeah, you can see that. That's our hot seat. And so I invited her to our meeting, and I don't know if I pronounced your last name. So
That's okay, everybody does. My name is Melissa Perkins-Manis.
Okay.
Would you like to?
If you just want to introduce yourself and,
Sure,
and talk about what.
Clinical neuropsychologist. I've been practicing for quite a while. I work in Providence. I own my own practice. And I have specialty in neuropsychological evaluation, working with children, developmental disorders. I love what I do, and I think it's a great opportunity
now that you have an opening, to do some public service and to give back to the community. Feel very appreciative of what I give to kids and families on a daily basis, and I'd like to do that in the community.
So some of the questions that we had asked, what do you think are some of the challenges that the Board of Ed faces, and what are the skills and experiences that you could bring to help us with some of those challenges?
Well, I think a small district, I think there's a whole new set of challenges. I think mobilizing your resources in such a way so as to improve instruction, using technology so that you're aware of what's working, what's not, using empirically supported data. And I think I, as a statistician and researcher in the past, know a lot about critically evaluating research and looking even at what's considered efficacious, really looking at the studies in what really is and what isn't. And just in my job as a neuropsychologist, I often consult with school systems. I am part of what's considered an IEP meeting in Rhode Island here, a PPT meeting. So I'm very much aware of special education law, again, what practices work, what doesn't. For example, you have a lot of special education students that you're managing outside the district. Is there a way to save money by putting them back in? And what methods are you using? Is it dyslexia? Is it dyscalculia? Are there positive behavior support measures that we need to put in place to do that? And I think just being able to assist with professional development with teachers and providing them with the supports that they need.
When making difficult decisions, what factors do you feel are important to consider before making a decision?
I think you have to examine all the factors, right, and put it in context and look at it from a systems perspective. So it's not just about that parent who wants something for their child, which I think every parent does, but it's really looking at it more globally and what's in the best interest of all students, teachers, the public school system, and so forth. So it's really just looking at it more globally, systemically.
And what experiences do you have that have prepared you to be a productive family member that you haven't mentioned previously?
Well, in addition to being a neuropsychologist, I'm also a business owner. So I feel like I'm always under scrutiny for budgetary constraints. And I think just my understanding of that is helpful because I know we all want to do what's best for children, but we have to do that in light of financial constraints as well.
What areas of the district do you feel need improvement, and what ideas that you have might support that growth?
Well, in looking at the trends in the data, I think over the past 3 years, there's been some positive trends, especially with math in 5th to 6th grades that were evaluated. But ELA seems to be a weakness in the district. I think looking at that more, I think more specifically, and I know that you're using STARS and different area 2 for assessments, but really looking at those assessments and trying to ascertain what is it that's keeping that progress from growing. As we see in math, it is, but it's the ELA that I was concerned about. Of course, there's no achievement gap. I know the district's doing really well, but I'd like to see that grow.
And how would you respond to a community member or school staff member who asks you about or how to handle the current situation at the school? It's a small community.
So it's a very tight-knit, close community, and I think what everybody should keep in mind is when somebody comes to you, I really don't think it's about divisiveness. I think it's like seeking support and not knowing what to do. So it's validating their concerns without being dismissive, but then directing them to the appropriate party, of whom they should speak to. So it may be a teacher or principal and so forth, but really just redirecting that focus on where they need to go to get the help, an objective party.
Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask any board members? Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question. Maybe I missed this. What's your time in Brooklyn? I know you mentioned you work in Providence, but you obviously live in Brooklyn.
I live in Brooklyn, yes.
And you have kids or
no, I moved
relatives
here
of?
In the last 5 years. We've lived here, my husband and I, and we're very active in the community. He's a coach at Woodstock Academy. We feel just like it's a great community, we love it, we're excited about the Brooklyn Fair, like what isn't there to love about the Brooklyn Fair? So, we just want to give back to the community.
The ride that goes around really fast, that's the one that's not to love.
No, it's the Ferris wheel, when you're stuck at the top and you're letting people off, that's the worst.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Anything that I didn't state or stated that might be a concern for you, or?
Is there anything else that I'm missing or?
What about educational background? I know you mentioned neuropsychology and is obviously very impressive. What about educational background? Have you done
So
Board of Ed before?
prior to even getting my doctorate, I needed income. So in addition to going to clinical psychology, I was actually a school psychologist for quite some time.
Okay.
I worked in Plainfield, Hebron, Norwich. Yeah, so I really have an understanding of the school system, teachers, and what goes on in that day-to-day life of students.
Thanks.
Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time with us this evening. Appreciate it. If we think of anything, or if you think of anything that you wanted to ask any Board of Ed members, when you go home tonight or later on, I would be more than happy to forward questions or anything else to them.
Great. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Is there any other new business that I forgot?
I have some others that are,
Okay, I have others too.
okay.
Do you want to go first?
You can
You go first. Okay. So the Board of Selectmen had met, and tell me the I would say yes, but I don't remember off the top of my head, to talk about our special act. We got language that would change the special act. So in Brooklyn, we have a special act, which is unique to no other town, of how Board of Ed is elected. And basically now it also affects how the first selectman and the Board of Ed come into office as well. So there's like a little clause of like, it used to be that the selectmen, when they're voted in, take office the next day. Now it would give a 2-week period. So like if there was a changeover, actually change over instead of like, okay, take your stuff and go. And the language that was presented at the meeting, and again, this was just a selectman, it was the first go around of talking about it, was to have the Board of Ed terms be 4 years and be rotating. So it would be, so let's skip the first election, let's go to like when it becomes normal, so every 2 years there would be an election. Every 2 years, only 3 members of the Board of Ed would go up for re-election. So we don't have the change that we have now, where potentially all 6 could be new at one time. What would happen is, and what we're kind of throwing around discussing, is that the first election, 3 candidates would have to be in a 2-year pool, and then 3 candidates would be in a 4-year pool, just to get that first rotation going. Inside of those 2 pools of people, so for the 2-year and the 4-year, there would still need to be a minority representation. So in other words, Nate, May, and I couldn't run in one pool because we are all representing Democrats. So we'd still have to have at least one person from another party in those pools. They did suggest that, we still wouldn't be able to have more than 4 person per registered party, again, to keep that minority representation. It would need to have town meeting to approve the change, because again, it does also affect how the selectmen take their office as well. They're talking about the possibility of having a town meeting in September, so that more people could have it explained to them, if there's further questions. I think there's some other things that might go into that town meeting as well. And this would need to be approved and decided upon at least 6 months before next year's election, just so that that's the statute of how it goes into place. So I would invite, if anybody has any questions at all, I will answer them to the best of my ability. It seemed like a reasonable amount. There was some discussion. The Board of Finance does have 6-year terms. And I know Rick and I had talked previously, I think 2 years ago, when he was initially trying to get this through, of saying that we didn't think that 6 years was necessarily the best term. But we were trying to figure out the rotation part of it, and so we think that the
That's
four.
spelled out in the state statute, that's not a special act.
The 6 years?
You can be, I'm not gonna remember this right, you can have 6-year terms, 8-year terms, something else. I want to say 12, but that seems a little ridiculous. But anyway, it's in the statutes, it's not something that's a special act.
What they're talking about is
No, I don't
making
mean
a
that. I
special
just
act.
wanna point
Right,
out
oh, no, but
She was
so
just-
I was just saying that when we were talking about changing the Board of Ed terms from 2 years,
Yeah.
that Rick thought going from 2 years to 6 years was not necessarily the best.
It's probably
For-
hard to
for our-
find people to commit.
Oh, of course it is.
So I apologize if I
I see.
was a little fuzzy on that one. So because I've been talking with Rick, this has been going on for several years, because it didn't make it through last year's session because of budget stuff, and then, so it finally got passed this year. So that 4 years is really kind of that sweeter spot of not quite Board of Finance level, but still allowing for the,
Trouble finding people.
but it still allows for that rotation, so we don't have to worry about, every, 2 years in November, that you could potentially be having 6 new people that nobody's ever been on a board before, and starting from scratch every 2 years, which is unfortunately the potential that we have right now.
In general, I'm very supportive of this, but I haven't discussed this with Rick yet, so I'll go to get some more stuff about it. I think there is a defect in that proposal. It doesn't allow for consideration of people who wish to be on the Board of Education, but do not belong to one of the 2 majority parties.
And actually, the verbiage that I'm reading doesn't say anything about that it has to come from the major parties. The only thing is there has to be minority representation. So when you're electing those, so when those 3 people go up for election, it has to ensure that at least when those 6 people are all elected, that there is minority representation. So it does kind of open the door for an unaffiliated or whatever other party to be on. I was just using the members that are
I think
currently
it
on.
needs some more work, because I guarantee you, if that's what he's depending on, then one of the 2 major parties will reject their minority. You know what I mean?
So
I don't think if you elect 3 in a year, and 2 are Democrats and 1 is a member of the Green Party, Republicans are gonna be happy about it.
Doesn't mean that's all that, if that's what
See what I
the
mean?
election came to, yeah.
But as
So I
long
don't know how they
as
want-
long as there's not,
But you would still have Republican representation already on the board.
yes, so as long as there's not 4
I mean, you
members.
would, because the 3 that are not up for election that year would be,
If they
At
happen
least
to be
one or two of them
Republicans
would be
on there,
Republican.
then there is.
After a couple of
Well, or
years,
each cycle,
cycles.
right, in any cycle, you could be.
Well, so what the election says is that you can't have more than 4 of any one party. So even if it was the Green Party or whatever, so no, it doesn't guarantee that the Republicans have all of the seats, because that comes to majority, so I'm just using probably, but so it's still having to minority representation in the sense of you can't have more than 4 of one party.
So potentially could come down to the way the selectmen, that you could have more votes, but still not make it on because you didn't have.
Correct.
The right party
Correct.
representation.
Yes, so it could come down to that, and that's what we were talking about, is like that first election, we have to make sure that the 2-year group and the 4-year group are like almost like 2 separate elections. And so in each of those groups, you'd have to have separate, it couldn't be 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats running in the 2 opposite groups.
It's
You'd
not
have to
gonna
have
be
some
just
crossover.
that first initial, it's gonna be every election.
Correct, but so it would have to go through, and it's just the same thing with, like you said, with the first election,
You might
it's
get
like,
the most votes, but
votes,
still
but if-
not make it on.
yes, if 3 Republicans got the most votes, you still have to have a Democrat or
Who that
unaffiliated.
person got the list of votes will have to be on.
Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So it's not decided, they want to have another, information session at a town meeting, attach it to something else, so that if other people had questions or further concerns or whatever, I mean, we have some time to do this, again, it has to be in, we have to vote on it as a town 6 months before the election in November. So we've got time to get it accomplished, but I just wanted to bring back with you what that was. I also did attend the CAVE Summer Leadership Conference last week in Westbrook with Joan, and it was interesting talking about diversity and kind of perceived diversity and what we're doing in communities and some of the discussions about it. So it's not necessarily just, the staff that's, representing your communities with the students and things like that. So a lot of interesting conversations were had, and we did, I don't know if anybody's seen the exercise, I don't know what it's officially called, but you stand in a line, the whole room stands in a line, and various questions, you take a step forward, you take a step back, and it's based on privilege. And by the end of the question and answer scenario, thinking about privilege, and there's a group that ends up way up in the front of the classroom and the group that ends up way in the back, and it's being exposed to library books or having reading material at home, or just various things, and just really made you think about kind of how your life is, how you've come to be in your life, and not necessarily taking everything for granted of things that you've been exposed to that maybe somebody else just didn't, and you never even realized that it made a big difference. So it was, for some of the people that were in the front of the room of the privileged class, so to speak, they expressed that they almost felt bad about having what they had, and not even realizing it made such a difference, but there was just such a gap between like that front person and the back person, and just it was kind of emotional for several people. Just like, I didn't think that I was this far ahead or this far back, and kind of coming to grips with it, and figuring like how do you move that forward, and how do you bring it to school, and making sure that things are representative of all kind of levels. So it was just very interesting and very eye opening. So we made it there before the rain, so it's nice to be inside. Other stuff.
The CAVE conference is an annual conference, and board members are encouraged to attend. You probably have already received an email. Or yes.
Yeah, right.
I started to tally sheet of how many times I get an email from. It's crazy. But I've lost that tally sheet a long time. The conference is November 16th and 17th. It's a Friday and Saturday. You have to go on and register yourself, and you can go on and register for one day or both days. If you're able to go, it would be nice to go. Several members can go and kind of divide up their little workshops that happen. And so if you choose to go on, register yourself, and then you'll get a kind of receipt. Just give it to me, and we'll process the enrollment fee for that. This in Mystic again, yes.
Yeah. Mystic, Groton, depending on.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's the Mystic Marriott in Groton.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
It's very informative, and you really can select the sessions you want to go to. There's some nice sessions that I found useful as board members. I don't think you can ever stop learning about the role of a board member and some of the opportunities and responsibilities that you have. So it's good.
And I think, like for myself, I'm going a couple of times. I think there's always, you're in a different place. So there's something that you may have heard before, but it finally clicks, or you just needed to hear at a certain time that you're like, oh, that's okay, that makes sense. And I think it's interesting sometimes that they do all of the new legal stuff that has come down. So it's if you're interested like in the policy making and things like that of new mandates that have come down and whatever, and kind of actually explaining some of them and listening to some other boards and making those connections of we do pretty good as a board in the district, and we're not necessarily having some of the same issues that other people do. So it's kind of nice to be able to bounce some ideas off of other people that are struggling with things that either we've dealt with or they're we can ask them questions. So
The next item under other that I wanted to just bring up was, there's property that was for sale off of School Street. So this is a conversation I believe came up to this board years ago. I don't know how many years ago, but there was a discussion that occurred. So initially what you need to understand is School Street is the street that our parents access to get into our preschool drop-off line in the midday. It's also the line where our parents wait on School Street in order to do the drop-off and pick up at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So there are some potential concerns. So right now, School Street, there's one house on School Street. That house is beyond where our parents line up in the traffic. So it's a dead-end road and our parents all line up. It does not impact that one property. The property that they're selling is a property that kind of extends from there and goes behind our property here. I have two kind of sets of maps. They're not really, they're what I think, if you want to look at them. And so I'm just going to explain to you what, and so there are several pages long. And so there's an aerial view, which doesn't do you much good, but then there is a couple views. The last 2 pages are some property lines that I think are the highlighted lines of the property that's for sale. So I guess this conversation had come up at one point with the board. And so the impact of if that property gets sold and whatever gets built behind there would probably eliminate the ability for us to stop traffic on School Street and allow our parents to park there while they're waiting to pick up kids. And so I've had that conversation with a few different people, Mr. Ives being one of them, and said, you know, what's going to happen? So I guess at some point they talked about maybe kind of looking at this property and redefining our drop-off and pickup routes. That sounds great, except for it would include some engineering, some significant engineering, and the impact to our wetlands. So we'd have to figure out what we would need to do in order to actually change the drop-off pickup route if it required an actual physical change to the driveway. So there are going to be some impacts to us. That property was being processed, as far as I know, was gonna sell, and then the last I heard was that maybe it's not gonna sell. That property is not gonna move the way it was planned. So the question comes back again: is should Brooklyn proactively do something to secure that property? And so, you know, when I talked to our first selectman, he said, you know, it's something that kind of jokingly last budget season, he said, well, you guys could buy it. And of course, you know, we can't buy property as a board, as a school. And so, but we might want to think about whether or not we would ask the town to pursue what could happen with that property. So I think that's our next step, if it's something we want to consider. I do think there's going to be a significant impact to how things are done. It doesn't mean it's going to be bad, but it's going to be costly and pretty significant. So I would ask that the board consider making a motion to have me draft a letter to the town to at least have them consider what the potential is of them purchasing that property, how that might impact us if they didn't do that, because there's going to be a cost to the town to rework.
So if I read that highlight correctly, and
Yeah.
I know but does that highlight actually come onto our grass?
So it looks.
Looks like it.
That's a Google Earth map satellite thing.
The one that
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah. That, yeah. Yes,
that corner.
that's what it looks like. And I don't,
Okay.
and so this is not an
Because that would
official map.
include the town's.
Well, it
That
comes
doesn't
with-
actually show the town's right of way, which would be the street. I can probably get a more specific map from NEPA website. They have GIS and
And really that came from Google Earth.
Yeah.
And
So
showing
it's
the,
not specific
yes,
to
it really is, and it might be over this much.
Although there's a blue roof on it.
I know. But I do think that we should, at least engage in a conversation.
We should, I think we should ask.
I mean, I think we should explore the possibilities of what that does, and even, you know, what happens if that parcel, if we carve off that corner that's just on the other side of the school street, like, is that a possibility too? So you don't have to buy the whole parcel, but I think it's a conversation that can be had and explored more.
So I think what the selectmen would want to hear from the board, me through the board, or you through me, is that we are interested in pursuing this conversation and interested in the town looking at what we could or couldn't do as a community to kind of secure a portion of that or the entire piece. It doesn't matter what it is, but I think that that's what they would want to hear. So if we're silent on the matter, they figure we're going to just make do with whatever happens.
I think it's hard to determine what the re-engineering cost would be without spending money to figure that out. Or it's easy to look at what the property is going for, but we wouldn't have any use for the property besides maintaining it.
So one of the things that I think, you know, I don't know there are some easements that are part of the question, and I don't know if that's water or sewer or both. Okay, and so that's part of the issue. And so the question is does that differ for a housing development versus something else? So the something else might be things like updating the senior citizen center, senior center here, housing the bus garage here, would be nice to have them on the same location. We have, and all of this is not my playground, but the town offices are split in buildings that are sort of need some repair. So those are some things that I think we wouldn't directly have a use for from a school standpoint, but in 10 years from now, what does happen to the population is the population of Brooklyn. At least we'd have an open door to
We have no growth area, we have root expansion wall. And we're going to have, if that fossil gets developed, we're going to have issues. There's no doubt about it.
I think
It's a town
what
road.
Mary is getting at is that parcel is not likely to be sold for single family residence. Public water, public sewer on it, it's going to be as high a number of stories as you can get and jammed in, restricted. And it's only subject to 10,000 square foot lot size, so there's a lot of building that can take place there, and it becomes a valuable piece of property too. So asking the town to buy it is not like falling off the block.
There was a proposal for condos there, and that would create a lot of traffic in.
Yeah.
They do have access on Franklin, but that impacts wetlands, so they weren't really crazy.
And they don't actually have access, they have to buy a parcel.
Well, it's, Markham's and.
What is it selling for right now?
What's that?
What's the property selling for now?
It was listed at 225. It's been under deposit since April and May. It is being released. The developer has backed away from the project. There was a little hiccup because I guess there was an easement. When they put in the water and sewer, they said it had to be used for town use only. But they built the brook and they wanted to put her building in, so there's already public hookup. So I think they already changed that, amended that. There was an amendment that was going to be going through, because I think maybe town use would eliminate that, but that's been withdrawn. Amended.
I think we definitely talk to the town and pursue what possible options are to maintain our area here and see if it is something that's being feasible or, like you said, possibly the town structure,
So I'll draft a letter on behalf of the Board of Education and myself that asking the town to consider what could be done is there a way to, secure some kind of, part or whole piece of that property that would,
I think the town would have to purchase the entire parcel, and then if they want to break it off later, now they can do that.
so, but you, so you're directing me to go ahead and send that letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want a vote or just a consensus?
You don't have to.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're-
Yeah.
we all agree that it's an important thing. Yeah.
Two words me that I don't think is.
Any other business that was all I have, the last of your others? Yes, okay. Sure. Public comment. Ms. Swimmer.
Just to go on, I'm gonna put my conservation hat on, just, not only do you have open space, wetlands there, you have a pond back there, so your engineering is gonna be out of sight. And you have designated open space that the town belongs, and you cannot do anything to that. So, and it's not that far back, so you are limited on what you can do back there.
Yeah, I thought there was, I think this is a conversation that I think you've been a part of before. It mentioned that there was some other additional,
Yeah, it's
Limits on
designated
ours,
open space where those trails are.
okay,
There's a pond back there, and
Okay,
that
so
brings
it's-
wetlands to a whole new
Yeah.
light.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of back to work with.
okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
Public comment?
I don't know if you can talk or not, but on my hearing call, I have no idea what you guys decided, and I need to know when I leave here tonight. And I hope it's favorable. I cannot believe that the Board of Education would think that it was okay to switch a child in the middle of the school year, knowing it's detrimental to them. I'm sorry. I've been in banking in Northeastern Connecticut for 48 years. I think I have credibility. If I'm moving into town, I'm moving into town. I'm not gonna back out. Barry Builders is a builders. I've never had anybody that I know of has complained or stepped out of a deal with Nick and Steve Barrett. So it's not like I'm gonna back out of the deal. We are moving to Brooklyn. And I don't want those kids switching mid-year. I don't understand what the problem is. I know you guys got burnt one time. I heard about that. But the credibility is I'm moving into town. I'm here. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna step away. I'm not gonna say in 3 months I'll forget it. You know, I'm gonna be here. When do I find out? Can you answer that without?
We did decide, according to the current policy that we have, and I can have Mrs. Buell make you a copy of that, and she will do a letter, that according to the policy, the students do not reside in the town of Brooklyn, are not going to be residing in the first 4 to 5 weeks of school. So we are going to uphold that policy and not allow the students to come into the
But I have to be an attorney. I'm sorry, it's gonna cost us much money to be an attorney. I will be there mid-school year. That's when I'll be there. And you're still not gonna allow those kids to go to the school in Brooklyn. Is that what, really? I'm really sorry too. I don't like to come into a town like this, but I've already checked with the education department of the state.
Any other public comment? Okay. Just to let the public know, we are going to, vote to go into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. We are not going to do any voting or any decisions after that. We are going to adjourn out of, or come out of the executive session and just adjourn the meeting. You're more than welcome to hang out in the hallway if you'd like to, but I'm just going to assure you that we're not doing anything after executive session. We're just going to adjourn the meeting. So we're just going to come out and then adjourn that. So. Yes. Oh, well, I was, no, yeah, I was going to think the official thing. So, 2055, I would entertain a motion to go into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter, and I would like to invite Superintendent Buell into the executive session. May I have a second? May? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Otto.
Good night.